What's up everyone, it's XRAYZ and welcome back. This is part 10 of the Call of Duty Zombie storyline. Before I jump into it, I really quickly want to thank all of you guys that have been supporting this series. And, you know, this is it. This was the final DLC for Black Ops 2. We're not going to have zombies anymore till the next Treyarch game comes out, so it's probably going to be another year till we see more of the Call of Duty Zombie storyline or whatever they decide to do. This is really sad, you know, I'm not going to be able to do one of these for a while. I have a pretty big announcement that I want to get out of the way in a little bit. But before I jump into that, I really want to thank all of you guys. You know, Call of Duty Zombie storyline has been a huge part of my channel. It's been thanks to you guys that I have gotten so much popularity, that I've gotten so many people to come over and subscribe, and it's because you guys are really interested in the zombie storyline. With that being said, the big announcement I want to let you guys know is that I am going to be doing a custom zombie storyline. So if you guys are big fans of this series, and you guys are really going to enjoy that one, it's going to be a completely different universe, different characters, it's going to have its own story, and it's going to be kind of delivered in the format that I do these. So I'm going to have a whole gameplay playing in the background, I'm going to have an actual story on where I'm narrating, I'm going to have audio clips, and I'm going to be doing some voice acting for a couple of the characters, etc. and stuff like that. So if you guys like this storyline series, this zombie storyline series, then you guys are really going to love this custom zombie storyline that I'm going to be working on. So look forward to more info about that closer towards the release of Call of Duty Ghost. I want to be releasing episodes of the custom zombie storyline when Call of Duty Ghost is out, so I can keep you guys that love zombies entertained. So hopefully you guys are backed and happy with that kind of stuff. Yeah, but anyways guys, thank you guys so much for the support. This is probably going to be the last episode for a while. So if you guys could slap a like and a favorite, that would be amazing. Only because this is probably going to be the last episode for like a year. So if you guys could support this video with a like, that would be amazing. If we could reach 2,000 likes again, that would be insane. And I think you guys are amazing, you guys can do it. So let's try to get to 2,000 likes. But with that being said, with the big announcement out of the way, let's jump into what exactly happens in Origins. Normally this would be the part where I tell you that if you guys have not seen episodes 1 through 9, to go back and see them. But honestly, Origins is such a crazy and weird twist to the zombie storyline that going back is not necessarily the right option. I was actually thinking of making this episode part 0 of the Call of Duty Zombie storyline, because this is originally the actual origin of how it all happened. It's very confusing, so pay close attention to what I'm going to be saying, because this is going to be a really surprisingly detailed origin story, and there's going to be certain situations in here where maybe you saw it in a previous episode and you thought, well, you know, how is this possible? I'm going to be clearing up a lot of stuff. So pay close attention. If you have to go back and, you know, rehear something, feel free to do so. And once you're done watching this part, you can actually go back to part 1 and rewatch it, get a refresher on what exactly happens after Origins, which is kind of cool because this is going to be a giant loop, I guess you could say. So you're going to get up to part 9 and you're going to, you know, go back to the beginning. It's kind of weird, really, but I think it kind of adds a little twist and makes this whole storyline a little bit more interesting, a little more fun for you guys. But anyways, with that being said, let's jump into the story itself. This is going to be part 0 technically, but for the sake of keeping this in an order on a playlist, this is going to be part 10 officially, but unofficially this is part 0. So let's jump straight into the story. Origin takes place during the events of World War I. During this time, the German research organization, which we all know as Group 935, was tasked with creating powerful and revolutionary weapons to try and win the war for the Central Powers. Some of the weapons they include are the Mauser C96 pistol that we see as a new starting pistol that were designed by Dr. Maxis, as well as the new German military forces, the armory like the giant robots and the tanks and stuff like that. Origins actually takes place in September of 1917. During this time, Dr. Maxis and Dr. Richtofen were leading an archaeology in an excavation site that was located in the trenches of northern France. Dr. Maxis had promised the leaders of Group 935 that this was the location of an unknown new element. During the mining, a mysterious and ancient ruin was discovered beneath the battlefield. So this is the part where you see in the trailer where they're kind of knocking down stuff, as well as the new element that Dr. Maxis spoke of, which was classified as number 115 on the periodic table. So we already know what 115 is. This is just kind of like the origins of how they found it. The group planned to use the powerful new element as a power source for the new weaponry for their Wonder Weapon program. So they were trying to create more advanced weapons, and with the use of this new 115, they were trying to use it to kind of make super powered weapons, which would later become known as Wonder Weapons. So in order to be able to use this power, they started planning and they started creating a series of conversion generators, which can be found around the map, that utilize 115 to create localized energy fields. You know, they were using these generators, and while they were using them, they were actually creating these little weird time bubbles where future machinery and ancient machinery would be coming forth and going from different time periods, which kind of baffled Dr. Maxis and made him think that this thing was creating a kind of crease in the space-time continuum, a split or a break for them to actually be able to go through different time periods. As the excavation continued, more amazing things were discovered by Group 935. They discovered an ancient box that was capable of delivering weapons from various time periods, which we all happen to know now as a mystery box, but back then it was known as the ancient box. Because of this discovery, Dr. Maxis became even more confident that 115 had time-altering properties, which meant that the element was able to make you go through time. Whether it meant going back in time or forward in time, he didn't know, but at the time he knew that 115 was capable of altering time itself. As 115 was excavated, Dr. Richtofen took part in the creation of 4 giant mechanical robots. So while this whole thing was happening, Dr. Richtofen is, kind of focusing more on creating these giant robots, utilizing the power of 115. But as he was going through the construction, Richtofen noticed that Maxis was starting to act crazy. He was starting to be more paranoid, he was starting to have mental psychosis, and eventually the symptoms worsened as Maxis started to hear a little girl's voice from a girl named Samantha, who began communicating with Maxis. Samantha, this voice that Maxis was hearing, was begging him to free her from this realm known as Agartha. Due to the constant interference with their work, Richtofen grew to despise the unseen voice. So this is why you have this kind of tension between Richtofen and Samantha. It is all because he knew that Samantha was distracting Dr. Maxis from his work. Because of the increased activity from Germany within France, the Allied forces became fearful of what the Kaiser was planning, which is the leader of Germany, and they began organizing an operation to investigate the activities of Group 935. Chosen by the Emperor himself for his leadership and victory at Mukden, Takeo Masaki was to infiltrate the research team and seize all weaponry for the use of Japan. This can be seen in the notes from the battlefield. You guys are going to be seeing these things kind of pop up on screen. Meanwhile, after the ruins had been unearthed, many attempts were made at opening the main chamber of the mound using brutal force. So for you guys that don't know, this is the actual excavation site in the middle, and they were trying to actually get more deep. They were using explosives, they were using whatever they could to try to open it with brute force, but they weren't able to actually get inside of it. However, after a gramophone was presented and played music to lighten the mood, the main chamber's seal revealed itself, where Maxis learned through the writings in the chamber of a device created by an ancient race known as the amplification rod. Now, this is actually kind of cool because this amplification rod is actually mentioned in Buried, it's mentioned in RayZ, it's mentioned in Transit. This amplification rod is what they need in order to communicate. So this is kind of like the origins of where this amplification rod came from. They placed his gramophone down, it started playing music, it actually activated this kind of hidden chamber down below in the excavation site, and they were able to kind of go down there and see more writing, and they saw this mention of a amplification rod, which harnessed the energy of the elemental stones. Due to neither of the stones nor the rod being located, Maxis began to create his own replicas of the elemental staffs, and this is where you hear Samantha saying, my dad had this plan, he wanted to create kind of these imitations, these replicas of what the elemental staffs are for, which is what you actually end up doing during the Easter egg of the actual map. When Dr. Maxis started presenting this idea, Richtofen began to question him. Again, he was seeing all these psychotic breaks, he was seeing him talking to this kind of weird voice in his head, and he believed that the amplification rod was just a myth, it was something crazy, it was nothing real, and he just thought that Dr. Maxis was insane. So he planned to report the mental instability of Maxis to the leaders of Group 935, which again, we see this as another letter. So Richtofen, thinking that, Maxis had gone completely crazy, he's hearing voices, he decides, what, this whole idea is just a myth, this isn't real, I'm going to report Dr. Maxis to the leaders of Group 935, have him removed, have him, get some help, because at this point Richtofen actually cares about Maxis. So as all of this is going on, Dr. Richtofen is planning on telling the leaders of 935 that Maxis is, insane, that he's crazy. Samantha begins to communicate more frequently with Maxis. So she's telling him, you know, talking to him more. She's trying to convince him that she is his future daughter. She's telling him, you know what, I am your daughter from the future. You have to help me, please. And, you know, with all the constant, you know, telling him over and over, he starts to question his own sanity as well. So anyways, fast forward a little more. One night, you know, a team of soldiers are trying to install more generators. Again, they're trying to harness more of this power from 115. And as they're doing it, they started reporting it. They started seeing, you know, strange ancient figures emerging from the mound. And they started reporting that a lot of men had died, and that apart from that, a ton of them had just gone missing by the morning. So as you know, these guys had gone missing, some of them ended up dying. They started noticing that the corpses started to reanimate themselves because of the effects of 115. The test site slowly started becoming infected by these creatures, and even Maximus himself started to turn into a zombie. The report of the creatures provoked the United States. They started hearing these whispers, these words of these kind of creatures. So the United States decided to send in their own kind of informant into it, and they decided to send in Tank Dempsey to the test site to investigate the group's work as well. Meanwhile, this whole thing is happening. We go over to Russia. They're still, you know, in this kind of civil war, kind of torn area. You know, they're having a lot of trouble, and Russia is also kind of skeptical of what is going on with Germany. So, believing that Germany was gearing up to unleash, you know, some catastrophic huge weapon, they sent in their own informant, this time being Nikolai, and he also took the same mission. He had to go in there and investigate what was going on. So all three soldiers, Tank Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takeo, they all make their way to the site. So as this is all going on, and as all three are trying to meet up with him, he decides to actually preserve Max's brain. This is where you see in the opening cutscene where his hands are bloody. He actually cuts the top off of Max's head, pulls out the brain, and decides to preserve it as long as he can until he can find a new host, a new body to put it in. So after they kind of meet up all together, we see that in the opening cutscene, they decide to kind of set aside, you know, their nationalities, their allegiance to whatever country they're from, and to decide, you know what, we have to survive this zombie attack. And, you know, apart from this going on, you know, they're trying to survive zombie attacking them. They're trying to survive, you know, with the gigantic robots just kind of stomping around the battlefield. And while this whole thing is going on, Samantha is still trying to contact them. You know, he's telling them, you know, while they're still in the midst of trying to fight off, she's begging them to release her from Agartha. And while this whole thing is going on, Richtofen already knows that, you know what, I've heard this voice before. It made Maxis go crazy. But Tank, Nikolai, and Takeo, they haven't heard of this voice before. So while Tank, Nikolai, and Takeo agree to help, Richtofen was kind of focusing on creating a quad-rotor drone for Maxis, and that's where we kind of see him, you know, flying around and shooting zombies, which allowed him to live temporarily until he could find a human body that could be suitable for him to kind of transfer his brain over. So anyways, eventually the four are able to open the portal to Agartha, to the Ether's energy beneath the ruins, which allowed Maxis to meet his future daughter and Samantha to be freed from the control of the zombies. So after this all happens, Richtofen, Tank, Takeo, and Nikolai, they were all rewarded with, you know, greatly for all of their help. That's where we see the ending cutscene. And, you know, while this happens, you know, the zombie population is contained, it's controlled, and, you know, months later the war ended with the Allies winning, and they signed the treaty. And, you know, because this all happened, Group 935 was actually disbanded because Germany had lost, you know, they had a hefty loss. So that's what happens basically. It's the end of the war. Richtofen, Takeo, Tank Dempsey, they all kind of disband. They don't see each other. But nothing is really mentioned about how they forget what happens, what exactly happens. They might just have to say that because they were exposed to element 115 and we see all these effects from it, they start having amnesia, they start losing their memory. And that's why in the future when they meet up, they actually, you know, meet up again and they say, you know, why do I feel like I've seen this before, and all of these kind of stuff, which you can learn more about, again, going back to part 1 and going forward. So that's the end of World War I, and then we see that 21 years later, World War II starts, and that's where we start seeing part 1 of the zombie storyline. Again, you guys can go back to the actual playlist and go through and see the whole storyline itself. But anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Call of Duty Zombie storyline. If you did, remember to slap a like and a favorite. Tell me what you guys thought overall, what the whole story was. In the end, we found out that Samantha was just playing a game. This was all just a kid's game to her, which is very sad. But again, we still need to know what's going to happen after Richtofen was in control, after he got full control, or if maybe they go with Maxis being in control. We'll see what happens, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Slap a like and a favorite. Again, if we can try to get 2,000 likes, that would be insane. Anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I might do another episode on the Marines. Let me know if you guys want to see that, because I still have yet to do an episode on that, and they have their own story as well. So if you guys want to see that, let me know, and I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you guys are new and want to subscribe, feel free to do so. I'm XRAYZ, I'm out. Peace.